Welcome to Cooper Talk. I'm your host, Steve Cooper, and remember, I'm only as hip as my guests. And I have to tell you something, people. It was 4 years ago today. I was just figuring the math out when I was in the hospital with my heart problem. And it was weird because I remember I had to call, and I went in on a Sunday, and I had to call my guests and cancel them on a Monday. And they're like, oh, what happened? And I said, oh, I'm in the hospital. And they're like, oh, I hope you get better soon. But I got to tell you,
the leader in talk radio on the internet, right here on K98Talk.com.
Is debt beating you down? You need discipline. You need the Debt Ninja. If you've been caught in a financial trap and need to be set free, then you need the Debt Ninja. Want to stop those harassing collection calls, start saving thousands in interest and fees, and get out of debt fast? Then you need to call the Debt Ninja. The Debt Ninja will find the best companies across the country that will help you consolidate all your bills into one easy payment, reduce your payments by 30 to 50%, and get you out of debt fast. If you have unsecured debt of $10,000 or more, such as credit cards, loans, or medical bills, call the Debt Ninja for a free 15-minute consultation.
Call 800-826-1246. 800-826-1246. That's 800-826-1246. Call today.
The Debt Ninja.
This is Slickery Trigger for Rebel Road Tactical. With proper care and feeding, your pistol will be ready when you need it. There to save your life. Shouldn't your gear be that good? Whether you need a holster for comfortable everyday carry or a tough-as-nails holster for your next training course, Rebel Road Tactical has what you need. Check us out on the web at rebelroadtactical.com.
Tired of paying outrageous prices for Viagra? Well, we have great news for you. Now you can finally get Viagra at huge discounts. Healthy Man allows you to save up to $500 on Viagra. Why pay U.S. pharmacy prices of $15 per pill or more when you can get Viagra for less than $3 a pill? Call today and get 40 Viagra pills for only $99. This can cost as much as $600 at your local pharmacy. You can't afford not to call us. If you want Viagra at the lowest prices, never pay $15 a pill pharmacy prices again. Get Viagra for less than $3 a pill. Call 1-800-516-7602 today and save up to $500 and get 40 pills for just $99. Healthy Man is fast, easy, and affordable. Operators are waiting at 1-800-516-7602 to take your call right now. Call 1-800-516-7602. That's 1-800-516-7602. Again, 1-800-516-7602.
In these uncertain economic times, you've got to do whatever you can to save money. One of our biggest expenses can be our cars, especially when unexpected repair bills hit. Not anymore. If you own a vehicle with less than 130,000 miles, is less than 12 years old, has a warranty about to expire, or even no warranty at all, you could stop paying for car repairs. Roadside assistance, towing, and rental coverage are all included. Don't wait for the next repair. Make one free call right now to see if you qualify. If your vehicle is less than 12 years old, has less than 130,000 miles, even if it's out of warranty, paying for car repairs can become a thing of the past. Call us right now and get your car protected before your next repair bill hits. Get protection and no more repair bills. Call 800-696-1030. Again, 800-696-1030. That's 800-696-1030. 800-696-1030.
Alright folks, this is Rick Robinson with you. I want to tell you about some friends of mine from a company called Security Enforcement Specialists. When I ran my security agency for 12 years, I worked with one of these partners on a daily basis. He's been involved in this agency now, and with his other partner, they do have over 30 years of experience in the private security industry. If you own a business, and you need someone to keep you or your customers or residents safe, then I highly recommend contacting Security Enforcement Specialists today. Give them a call at 405-703-1796. Again, that's 405-703-1796. Again, tell them Rick from K98 Talk sent you. Like I said, if you need the help, they are here for you. So make sure that you go look them up, check them out, and see what they can do.
Wrong way. Welcome to the place.
Individuals and businesses with tax problems, listen carefully. Do you feel like you're losing control over your finances? If you owe over $10,000 in back taxes or have unfiled tax returns, we can help you take back control. The IRS is the largest and most aggressive collection agency in the world, and they can seize your bank account, garnish your paycheck, close your business, and file criminal charges. Take control of your tax problems now by calling the experts at Tax Mediation Services and take advantage of the Fresh Start program and new laws that may allow us to negotiate a settlement for the lowest amount possible. Our team of tax attorneys and enrolled agents can stop collections and get you protected so you can take control of your financial future. Tax Mediation Services is accredited by the Better Business Bureau. Call now for a free case review and a price protection guaranteed quote.
Call Tax Mediation Services now at 800-610-9050. That's 800-610-9050. 800-610-9050.
The Internet will never be the same. You're listening to K98Talk.com.
Wow. Good God, y'all. What is it good for? Absolutely.
It was one of the scariest things that happened to me, but in retrospect, it's one of the best things that happened to me because I changed my lifestyle completely. And it's amazing that, I was a smoker. I drank almost every night, and I really stopped, and I lost weight, and I feel good. And so if you have any health issues, check up on them, man. And if you take medicine, I'm on 3 medications. If you do that, make sure that you take them, and you be a good little camper. And that's about it. Anyway, we have a great show today. My guest, it's so funny. When Sean Ryan was on, the creator of The Shield, he talked about his new show, Mad Dogs. So me and Joanne sat down and watched it. And my guest... I'll be honest, that it is one of the, I'm not going to give anything away, but it is one of the creepiest entrances of a show, and he's so damn good in the role. And we're going to talk about his great career, and my guest is Mark Pavanelli. How you doing, Mark?
Hey, I'm good, Steve. How are you?
Good. Yeah, it's so funny because I saw you on Mad Dogs, and we'll get into that, but man, that role, I'll tell you, you were so good in it because you not only got to, be scary and mean, but you got to bring your comedy out.
It's not that often that I get to play a bad guy, a dark character, without it being an obvious joke. And even though, like you said, in Mad Dogs, there's a lot of comedy in it, I think that character is written to be legitimately scary. And so it was such a fun departure for me to be able to, try not to make a gag out of it and to try to make it legitimate. And if it turns out to be funny on top of that, all the better.
Now, I got to ask you, you're from Ohio originally, right?
Well, I was born in Ohio, and I only lived there for like a year and a half, but I grew up in outside of D.C. in Silver Spring, Maryland.
Okay, now, when did you decide you were funny? When did you decide you were acting? And then was it frustrating because of your height? There's not a lot of actors that are your size. I mean, how did you start following this process, and how did you stay with it at times? Because it must have been frustrating at times.
Well, it still is frustrating at times, but I think every actor has their own, their own quality that either helps them and also, they feel like can hold them back. And there's no doubt that my size, and for those who don't know me or don't know what we're talking about, I'm 3'9", so that makes that's a pretty significant difference when you're going out and being in a business where so much of everything is about your look. But, Steve, like when I grew up, it's weird because I think, growing up so physically different from birth, you're sort of always aware of who you are, and you're aware of, everybody else is very aware of what you like physically. So you either accept that or you try to run away from it. And I think I accepted it pretty early on. And that gave me a bit of an advantage in the fact that I'm like, okay, this is who I am. This is the body I'm in, and I'm going to make the most out of it.
Now, when did you? At what age did you decide you wanted to act? Because as I always say, I talk to so many different guests that they want to do this, they want to do that, and a lot of them always say, "And I took an acting class, and there were so many beautiful women, I had to go to acting." But when did you decide, and what made you gravitate towards wanting to act? Was there a certain performance you saw? Were you an avid TV watcher, or movie watcher?
I think it was a combination of a lot of things. I mean, I think my first time on stage, when I got the bug, is my mom dressed me up, God knows why, as Shirley Temple for the second grade talent show, and I sang on the Good Ship Lollipop in a dress and a wig and a big old lollipop in my hand, and I kind of was hooked after that. It was a revelation to me. I think that it's, again, like being this size, and in first grade I had an emergency spinal fusion. You were talking about your health issues. I was too young to really know what was going on, but I ended up in like a 12-hour surgery, fusing my neck, and in a halo cast for 6 months when I was 6 years old. And everybody around me, I just was existing. I didn't have any frame of reference to realize that not every kid should go through this, and this was a big deal. But everybody around me just was so inspired, I guess, by my perseverance. And so I became a bit of a celebrity in my little community, in my school, in my neighborhood, and within my family, being a little person and then having this quote-unquote trauma to go through. And again, like, I didn't think much of it, but everybody else sort of said, oh, you're so special. And so you come to start thinking that you should do something special with your life, and that you're more than just some regular kid, to a benefit and to a fault. And so I think I always dreamed of doing something that would impact people, because people told me I was destined to do that. Now, it ends up being acting, and there's a lot of ridiculous, non-inspiring stuff that happens as an actor. I don't know if that's the most, valiant of professions I could have chosen, but I always kind of wanted to be in front of people. I always wanted people to pay attention to me. It was a vanity thing, I think.
I think that is. I mean, it's all a matter of, it's so funny, and as we get older, how we handle, like different roles and stuff like that. Like for me, I always make a joke that I'm legally blind one eye and I have a lazy eye, and I always sit there and I know the thing is, I don't submit for auditions for a spokesperson, because when you can't look straight in the camera, you can't. I think we have to sit there and you really sit there and go, well, I always say to my friends, I'm bald, I'm cross-eyed, I have a beautiful girlfriend. If I can do it, anyone can do it. And I think that's the thing. When people see, like, you're shorter, I'm cross-eyed, but we do them well, we know people, and I think that inspires a lot of people.
I think it does. But the irony in that is that I'm just doing, a lot of it feels so selfish that I feel like I'm getting away with something because I'm doing a career that I always kind of wanted to do and knew I wanted to do. And I've existed in it for 20 plus years, and I've been able to, feed a family on it. And I go to work, and when I get to work, I have so much fun, and I feel like I'm getting away with something in a way.
Well, that's what you always say. If you love your job, it doesn't feel like work.
So, right. And most of the time, this does not feel like work. Yeah, the work is getting the work.
Exactly, that's a show. That's, as everyone says, that's why it's called show business. Once you're there, you're fine. But now, okay, so you go from being Shirley Temple in second grade, and so then where do you sit there? Where do you start? What is your career path? Not that a second grader has a career path, but as you get through high school, were you starting to get more involved in theater, or what were you doing? Because D.C. is cool, the area, because it's not that far from New York either.
Right, but it did feel like a world away. I mean, all of the professionalism of the business felt like another universe. I mean, I was just doing it. I got in all the plays in high school, and I was in the speech and debate team, on the speech part of the team, and we did really well. We went to the Nationals a couple years in a row, and so I was excelling in the arts. but it was on a completely minute level, and just as something fun to do. I mean, I don't come from a family of artists per se, and I think it was always, and plus being, again, so profoundly different, there weren't a whole lot of role models that I could look up to and say, well, they've done it. There was Billy Barty, and there was Michael Dunn and Hervé Villachez and David Rappaport, and half of them died in awful early young death. So it wasn't like there was a lot of encouragement to take this on. So it was only until I got to college, and I had anticipated that I would go to college and actually be a part of the work on the newspaper and become a journalist or get into advertising or something. But the first main stage show came along, and there were auditions, and I figured it was 3 days into school, and I thought, well, I'll go and I'll audition, and that won't work, and I will then go on with the rest of my life. And as the story goes, of course, I got cast in that, and I never looked back, and I just lived in the theater for the rest of my 4 years at college.
So now when you get out of college, I know you went to the University of Miami?
Well, I went to Miami of Ohio.
Okay.
Distinct difference, but yes. Miami of Ohio, which is a public institution in southwest Ohio. But a good school.
Yeah, I know the school. It's funny. Other guests have been to that school. I can't think who, but I know I've had some guests who've been there. But so you graduate and you're addicted to acting. You're in all the theater productions. You're ready to go. Now, what is your plan? What is your plan of action? Do you say I'm going to go to New York? Do you say I'm going to go to L.A.? Because once again, I say when you're 22, and you're out of college, you're going to a completely different world. What do you decide to do?
And again, I think that I had such a hang-up about really taking the leap and feeling like that this would be insanity to do, that I sort of inched my way through it. I knew I didn't want to go to New York or LA. Specifically, New York just seemed too daunting. And LA, I just didn't feel like I was good enough yet. And I felt like if I went out to LA, I would end up just doing what I call as dwarf roles, where everything I did was just specifically based on my height, and my talent would never shine through, and I would just be costume work and stand-in and extra and all that, and I didn't want to do that. So I ended up going to a regional town. I went to Minneapolis, which is a great theater town, and for 6 years I made no money, did a ton of theater, started to do regional theater around the country, and just built up confidence and some maturity, so that finally at age 28 I was ready to move to LA and go, okay, I'm going to take my stab at this and see what happens. And I'm old enough now to know that if it doesn't work out, I can go find something else to do.
It's cool. I know Minneapolis is funny. Minnesota, it's because I've always heard, it has a great music scene, it had a great stand-up scene, it had a great improv scene. It's a very hip city.
I don't live there anymore, but I have nothing but great things to say about Minneapolis. It is, the only reason it's not Chicago or New York is because it's so damn miserably cold.
Right.
And people stay away from it, and which is kind of one of the reasons it ends up being such a great town, is because it's a smaller town with big ideals, and it has an amazing arts community, and it's well supported, and I worked all the time. It was fantastic.
So you decide it's time for me to come to L.A., and so do you pack your car up, you move out, do you fly out, and where do you first live? Because I always like to find out where people first lived when they came to L.A., because it's so spread out, and you don't know. Like when I first moved here, I didn't know where to live, and then I lived in Hollywood, and then now I'm in Burbank, and I've been in Burbank for years. But it's just hard to find a place. When you arrived, what were your thoughts of coming to L.A.?
So I knew so little about L.A. My wife, we had been married a year. She grew up in Santa Barbara, so she had a little understanding of L.A. But we packed up the car, put our 2 cats in the car, and drove out here. And my wife had a friend who lived in Pasadena, and all I knew about Pasadena was the Rose Bowl and the parade. But we found a little apartment in Pasadena, and it was funny because when my wife had found the apartment, and when we were driving to it, we went through, we must have gone up the 5 or something, and then headed east. But I was like, wow, this is so far away from anything. It felt like it was so far east because, again, coming from the Midwest, everything is so close. And, in Minneapolis, you didn't go to St. Paul, which was 8 miles away because it seemed too far away. So coming out here and driving, 12 miles to get to Pasadena seemed like I was living in another county. But I'm still here. I've been here 16 years now, and I absolutely love Pasadena, and now it feels like it's next door to everything because nothing is close to anything out here.
That's true. Well, actually, you're right. Pasadena, you're right. You jump on the 134, you're getting places. It's not that far from Hollywood. That's the one thing about the Valley. Everyone says, oh, the Valley. And I guess Burbank and Pasadena really aren't the Valley, but we're close to everything.
Well, you're close to everything and next to nothing, too, because I inevitably will have an audition in Santa Monica at 5 o'clock on a Thursday afternoon, and it's like a 6-hour event for me to go do that. And it'll be a commercial audition. I'll walk in and bite and smile and walk out, and it takes 3 minutes, but it's 2 hours getting there and 3 hours getting back.
Isn't that the worst? Or when you have an audition and then you sit there and you're coming from Pasadena, I'm coming from Burbank, and let's say it's in Culver City. So you sit there and you allow yourself 2 hours, and it's that one day there's no traffic, and you get there like in 30 minutes, and you're going, I always just go in. I go, you know what? They could take me. But in the beginning, I would sit in my car, and you don't know what to do.
Your car becomes your little vestibule sanctuary. I spend so much time, like you said, you spend so much time there waiting for stuff in your car too. And I used to have a minivan, and for me a minivan was like a mobile home. I could get up and I could walk around in it, and I would have like little stations inside the minivan that I would sit and relax and watch DVDs and a little snack area, because it was such a big car, and you just spend so much time in it and wait around in that thing.
Well, what's amazing, and also as I say this, I did a thing on Saturday, some photo thing, and it was in Santa Monica. And the one thing I hate about LA is, not that I hate, but like everyone knows on weekends everyone leaves. When there's no traffic, driving in LA is great. You're close to everything, and when you sit there, you get spoiled. Like I drove to Santa Monica on Saturday. There was like no one on the 405. And it was the most beautiful thing. But then we go through the stuff when everyone comes back in town, and it's always, you're right, the auditions are always on the other side of town.
And what I love about LA is, what I always missed about the Midwest and the East Coast is that sense of community and that sense of unity. It's really hard to find out here. But traffic will unite everyone. Right. You can spend, like we are, you can spend hours talking about the traffic. It is like, it's our sports team. It's our one unifying thing that we all can relate to and can commiserate upon.
So you arrive, you're in Pasadena, you have the place to live, you feel like you're far away. Now, what's your course of action? Do you first seek an agent right away, or do you get a part-time job, or what do you do to start getting in the grind of getting work as an actor? You're already accomplished as a theater actor, but it's a crossover, and as everyone knows, I give theater actors all the credit in the world because you guys got to deliver every night. There's no cut, change the camera. It's you got to deliver. If you drop the ball, it affects the whole production. What do you start doing as a theater actor, especially since there wasn't a lot of theater out here? How do you keep your chops up? Where do you start from?
Well, I was fortunate that the summer before I moved out here, I had been in a play in Oklahoma City, and the guy I was rooming with, he was from LA, and one of his best friends was an agent. So the day I got out here, I basically had an agent, and that made a huge difference. And I had already gotten into the union, so I was on my way in terms of two of the big, hurdles you have to go through out here. And then it was just that slow process of auditioning, and I was the new guy, so, you do get a little bit of a break there, and I did have enough of a theater resume that people were willing to, at least meet me, a few anyway. And I started mostly doing commercials, and I did, like little bit parts. I think my first actual on-camera job out here was Penn and Teller had some kind of like science show that was, I can't even remember what it was called or anything, but Penn was doing some kind of experiment where you needed to show a contrast in size, so they needed a little person, and I did a little improv with him, and it felt very far away from doing Shakespeare, but it was my first time on camera and first time getting a paycheck, a job out here. So that was kind of exciting. And then I got a spot on Dharma and Greg, and that was the first guest starring spot I had. And that was kind of a real thrill because this was back before the days of the internet and 7,000 channels. I mean, the internet was around, but not like it is today. And to be able to call everybody up and have that phone chain of, hey, Mark's going to be on TV. He's going to be on Thursday night at 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock or whatever time Dharma and Greg was on. And that was a real, on a show people knew, was a real thrill. That was pretty exciting.
Now, what kind of roles were you going out for? I mean, I know they were to do with your size, but were they roles that you felt were, as you said, you didn't want to move out here in the beginning just to have the dwarf role. You didn't want that. Did you feel that these were roles that you were going out for auditions of something with at least some substance?
I'd say almost half of the, and again, we're not talking like I went out often. And even to this day, I mean, the amount I go out for auditions versus the amount of work I get is pretty disproportionate to most actors, I think, which is nice because I'm not wasting my time traveling all over town like we were talking about. But it's also frustrating because there's just not a whole lot of open-mindedness, maybe, to think outside the box with somebody who is so physically different. And back then, and even to this day, I'd say about 50% of the auditions that I see that are specifically for a little person, I turn down before I go in because it's just clearly not something I want to do. And so the ones I do go in for, generally, I feel there's at least something there. There's a character there. There's a depth to it. You know, what's interesting is I never set out to do fantastical characters. That was something in college. You're so naive about the business and you're so idealistic. And I said, well, I never want to play an elf or a leprechaun or a goblin or any of these things. And I came out here and I realized that, ironically, those are the characters, when it's specifically for somebody who's a little person, they're the characters that sometimes have the most depth. Because if you're writing a role for a little person, and this is true, in the mid-2000s more than it is now, but if it's for a little person and he's a lawyer, well, the whole gag is that he's a little person. And if it's for a little person who's an elf, you spend the whole time, the writing is written in such a way that they try to humanize the elf and make him as multidimensional and as human as possible to be relatable. So it's actually, ironically, those parts that sometimes have the most depth. The lawyer who's short is just short. It's
right.
The elf who has to have all these other attributes to make them relatable.
So now when you come out here and you're starting to get Dharma and Greg, now are you doing theater too now, or did you put that on the back shelf when you moved?
Well, I did do a couple plays out here. I did some Shakespeare, and I did a couple shows out here. But what happened was in the early, I think I moved in the beginning of 2000, and about 2003, I was approached by a production of Ibsen's A Doll's House that they were doing in New York with a theater company called Mabou Minds, an experimental avant-garde, sort of the fathers of avant-garde theater in the United States. And they were looking for the three men in the show to be little people. And Peter Dinklage was playing the lead, Torvald, and they had given me the role of Dr. Rank, who is his best friend. And we had about a 6-week run in New York. And about 4 days before we opened, Peter left because he had shot The Station Agent, and that was about to become the biggest little indie film of the decade, I think.
Right.
And so he had to go do all this press for it, and it became a huge hit. And so when he bailed, they asked me to take over the role of Torvald, which is the lead. And so all of a sudden I found myself in New York on stage doing the lead of a classic piece of theater, and it kind of blew my mind. It was a really successful show. We ended up touring it all over the world for the next 9 years on and off. We went to Moscow and Paris and Edinburgh and Oslo and Bogota and Brisbane, Australia and Madrid. It was insane.
What for a show like that, and you say when you travel, okay, because you're traveling around the world, as an actor, because, places are different, with what material you like, and the crowds are different, like Russia's different. How did you think it translated across the board, this play, to countries like Russia, like in Moscow, or were people more, how they say everyone's worried in Russia, were people more accepting to theater over there than what we would think as a stereotype of Russians going to a theater?
Well, I think on a whole, the international market for theater was so much more receptive than the American market. We played in about 6 different venues in America also, besides New York. We played LA, we played UCLA, we played in Charleston, we played in Columbus, Ohio, Chicago, Minneapolis, and there's just such cynicism about theater here as a general rule. I mean, unless you're going to New York and seeing Hamilton. And in the rest of the world, theater is government funded. And we were being sent over to play in these festivals that were funded by the government in theaters that were built by the government and supported by the government. And the audiences ate it up. They loved it. And it was kind of, it's a real shame to see what's happened with the arts in the United States. And I know it's changed since then a little bit around Europe and such with their financial crisis. I'm sure Athens isn't quite the same as it was funding-wise when we were there, and maybe that's part of their financial issues. But it was real eye-opening to get they were just such smart audiences too. It was a very complex show, and a lot of interesting themes going on, and they just ate it up. They loved it.
Isn't it crazy? You move out here to act, and then you end up going back to New York and traveling the world. It seems like that happens a lot. Like people, they'll move out here, and then all of a sudden they get this great opportunity.
And it was a godsend for me because it was hard because I had 2 young kids, and so anytime I left was always tough. And it wasn't, when you go on location with a movie or a TV show, your pay is a lot better than it is doing theater. But the experiences I had there were amazing, and it just kept me grounded from being out here. Being out here can wear you down, and it can frustrate you, especially, again, when you're not feeling like you're getting the opportunities that you envision for yourself in terms of, interesting parts. And so then every few months or every half a year to go and play Torvald in Madrid was pretty nurturing, and it kind of got you through the next 10 commercial auditions just fine.
Now, how long would you go away for when you did it? Was it, you said it was on and off for 9 years. Would you sit there? Would you know your schedule, like, for the year? Like, did they say, okay, we're going to go here? Or was it something in a matter of a month they would say, oh, by the way, Mark, we're going to, Greece? How would it work with your scheduling? And did it throw you off in your trying to get your keep your career maintained out here?
It was a little challenging. I think it was more challenging mentally than it actually turned out to be, because I kept thinking I can't leave because what if something happens? Because they would give you about 2 months notice or so and say, or 2 to 4 months notice and say, in September you're going to, some far off country for 3 weeks. And so I kept thinking, well, I can't audition the week before because I'm not going to be available for those 3 weeks. And then as soon as you get back, people forget you're in town. So it really was more like 5 weeks you were out of commission. And I don't think I ever missed out on anything, looking back on it now, that would have changed anything about my career. I fretted about it so much, and it's just like the old adage, whenever you want an audition, book a vacation, because sure enough, you'll get something going on. And there's never been a time where I decided to not go to that audition and then ended up regretting it. You just move on with your life, and you take your life experiences, and the work will come. If and one job isn't gonna change everything. You're here in it for the long, long haul, hopefully.
Now, as you toured the world, what would you say was the most beautiful theater? I look at some of these theaters in LA. Like, I was in the Orpheum a while ago, and you look up and it's so beautiful, and it's so just old and just vintage. What would you say was the most beautiful theater when you were touring the world in a show? Where was the most beautiful theater you were in?
There were definitely many, but the best was the Theater Madrid. It was the State Theater of Madrid, and it was this 900-seat theater. And if you think the Orpheum or the Pantages is pretty, or even like these Fox theaters around the country, there's one in Atlanta and Detroit, and they were built in the 20s, and they're very ornate, Art Deco. This was Madrid in the built in the early 1800s. So you can just imagine how grand and ornate and beautiful every bit of that theater was, and it's been kept up beautifully, and it was just stunning. You go out on stage and you just take your breath away a little bit.
Now, so you get back here, you're going back and forth. Now, what are some of the roles then you're getting? I mean, I looked through your IMDb, and you've been in a lot of stuff. What are some of the roles you're getting, and are you happy with the roles you're auditioning for?
Generally, I mean, I'm happy to keep work. You know, I'm happy to stay in the game. I hadn't quite gotten that one thing that sort of felt like I was moving along, and I was starting to get nervous that I was getting older, and I was doing guest starring spots. I did some stuff on Charmed and Frasier, and like I said, Dharma and Greg, and I can't even remember what else. But I was doing commercials, so I was supporting myself. But it wasn't until Water for Elephants came along that I felt like here was a chance to sort of elevate. The material was excellent. It came from a book that was a national bestseller, and one of the main roles in it was this very well-developed little person, and I fell in love with the character right away, and I felt like that's one of these. They come along once every 10 years, and the one that I had been out prior to that felt that way was Bad Santa, like 10 years before, which, you know, I wasn't right for. And it had been pretty, other than these guest starring roles and these co-starring things and these commercials, there's nothing of that much substance. And so when I got the audition for that, I really sunk my teeth into it. And I went in and I auditioned, and I was incredibly mediocre.
No, it's funny because you sit there and you say you sink your teeth into it. So you're probably running lines, you're getting really into it. You're ready. So why I hear that too. It's like when you go in, you're ready. Did you just feel that you sucked, or what? Or did you just feel you flubbed it, or why were you off your game? Because you seemed like it was something you were very excited for, and you're prepped for it. It's not like you're going in like you looked at the lines the night before. What happened when you went in? Why did you feel that you were mediocre?
Well, I think there's something I've learned, and I still, you know, it's a challenge every time, but there's a trick in auditioning that I had spent so much time, and it obviously it had worked out for me enough up until then, of trying to figure out what I thought they wanted and go in and try to do what I'd spend all this time thinking, well, this character probably should be older than I am, or this character is, you know, much bigger guy than I am, or this character is that or younger or whatever. And I would try to assimilate myself to whatever I thought they wanted. And I think I did that with Water for Elephants audition too. And somewhere along the line, and it was probably at that moment when I left that audition, that I realized that I hadn't made the choices that made sense for me, and that I hadn't been the actor and played the character the way I wanted to play him. Who cares what they think? In the sense that I have no control over what they want. I just give them what I want, and if that works for them, fantastic. And then I can walk out of that audition feeling like I gave everything I gave, and if that's not right, then we're not right. It's not a good marriage. And so I walked out of there, and I just realized that I played it safe. I didn't make choices that I thought I should make because I wanted to not mess it up. I was worried about not screwing up the audition as opposed to going for it. And fortunately, I got a call back nonetheless, and then I kind of changed my paradigm, and I went in there, and I went in for Francis Lawrence, the director, and the casting director, and I nailed it. And I knew, and when I walked out of there, okay, I did what I wanted to do. And if I don't get this part, it has nothing to do with me. And sure enough, I got a call 2 days later. And ironically, I got a call, and again, I'm lamenting about my career and how ridiculous it is. And I've had some pretty absurd roles and parts that now are just kind of fun to me. But I was doing a commercial where I was in a full body suit, it was a stunt job, and I was in they're called Playmobiles. They're like little kids' toys. They're kind of like Legos, but they're it's like a whole set of kids' toys called Playmobiles, and they were making life-size Playmobiles, and I was playing the daughter of all things. So I was fully in this costume where I couldn't move my arms, and I had no hands, and I had a big thing around my head. And when I got the call from my agent that I got Water for Elephants, I needed the costumer to hold the phone up to my head so I could hear that I had gotten this life-changing role in this, dramatic film with a bunch of Oscar winners as I'm doing this ridiculous stunt commercial.
That's funny. So now, how did you get into stunts? Because I know you've done some stunts. What brought you on that? What brought you that road?
Well, I just do them enough that I try not to get hurt. I don't claim myself to be a stunt man, but there's definitely been stuff that I've been in that called for a lot of stunts, and then sometimes they need somebody to cover a kid and do a stunt for a kid, or again, like some of these costume jobs, they want them to be really physical, or the costume weighs 40 pounds and I only weigh 75 pounds, so they end up being stunt jobs. But I'm I can't drive a car 120 miles an hour and crash it into a wall, and I can't fall off a building, and I just do enough that I try to not get hurt. But they're fun too, It's a little the stunt people are insane, and it's a little fun to hang out with them and just go for it and get knocked around a little bit without trying to die.
Now I have to ask you, because I always ask guests if they've been on the show. You were on Cold Case. I love the show Cold Case. What was your character on Cold Case, and did you get killed, or were you a killer?
I was an accomplice to a killer. I played, I think his name was Biggie Jones. I was the head of a traveling circus, some podunk traveling circus. And the trapeze artist fell from the high wire, and some horrible accident, which wasn't really an accident. And it turned out that the, mute stagehand was actually the guy who did it, but I was the one who manipulated him into doing it. So that was a fun role. That was another kind of into the dark realms, but not quite so far as Mad Dogs or a couple of Criminal Minds, where I was kind of a bad guy too.
See, that's what's great. Now, something about Cold Case, because I grew up near Philadelphia. I've always just dug that show, and they used to have it on Ion on Fridays, and I would watch episode after episode, and just because. I don't know. I just always thought that show, and I have had a lot of guests who have been on it, and I've watched it where I had Reed Diamond and Robert Romanus who were back-to-back episodes where they were both the killer, and I was like, this is so cool. I'm watching these killers,
right?
And you're sort of a killer. You're the manipulative killer, so that's great. So
I was even too good to kill. I was the guy behind the killing. Yeah.
So now after the Water for Elephants, Did people look at your acting chops differently? I mean, how did it change your career in somewhere where it was a movie that had, Oscar winners and it was critically acclaimed? Did people take you in a different light now?
They did. Yeah, it was a big step up, because I think it just had so much exposure. And even if people didn't see it, there was sort of an understanding of, okay, somebody cast you and saw you in this light, so we suddenly are going to give you that respect. And I went on a nice little run there with before Water for Elephants came out, Chelsea Handler was making her own foray into network television. She had a sitcom called Are You There, Chelsea, which they were auditioning the pilot for. And I went in to audition for a recurring character. This was based on her books, not on her Chelsea Lady show, but on her books. And Maura Prepon was playing a younger version of Chelsea Handler, and Chelsea Handler was playing her actual sister, which was part of the reason the show didn't ultimately work, but because it was very confusing. But nonetheless, they had a recurring character, a little person, barback or busboy. And so I went and I auditioned for it, and when I went to, after the first audition or second audition, they decided to up the character right then to a series regular. So that was the first time. I had done a couple pilots before, but it was always for recurring, and none of the pilots had gone. And so I think, this is maybe the fourth pilot audition I'd even been on in 12 years. being out here. And suddenly I was up for a series regular part. And when I went in for the studio testing with Warner Brothers, the head of Warner Brothers who was there, his wife was a huge fan of Water for Elephants, and he stopped the room and told all the other executives in there about, he hadn't seen the movie, but how much his wife loved my character. And so that kind of gave you a nice little boost before you start your audition, when there's 20 people looking at you all, and their boss is telling you how good this guy is. So that was a nice leg up. And I ended up getting that, and it ended up, we shot 13, it went to series, and we shot 13 episodes, and a live studio audience, and it was the perfect marriage of doing theater and doing TV. And I think that's one of the reasons that it worked for me so well, is because it felt very comfortable having a live audience there.
No, and I read, now you were the first little person to have be a regular on a network sitcom, I believe.
That's right. I mean, and the reason it's so specific is when you think about, when you're so different, and, little people have been the butt of a joke and still continue to be that way, even with the gains we've made in respectability. They're the butt of the joke, and it's such a small community that it's sort of the one community you can't make fun of most ethnicities anymore, and disability is kind of out of favor to make fun of, and mental disabilities, as all of that should be. But you can still get away with making the dwarf joke and having the little person run around and bite somebody's ankles or punch him in the nuts or be Randy and grab the woman's breasts or whatever stupid stereotype you want to fulfill. And so it was very daunting for me to go into this is a huge opportunity for me. But then again, I'm on a sitcom, and the person in charge of the sitcom is Chelsea Handler, who on her regular show has a little person as, a sidekick and kind of a prop on her Chelsea Lately show. So I made a lot of phone calls and sort of, not demands, but I insisted on with the producers that if I was going to do this, that, we had to not go there and not make it an embarrassment. It would have been heartbreaking. And to their credit, I never had to do anything I didn't feel comfortable with. And that's what made it so interesting, and why surprising to have if you have a little person on a sitcom, it seems like that's going to be your first go-to joke, and that's the only joke. But not that my size was ignored, because it's not ignored in my regular life. I talk about it. It's part of me. I'm very comfortable with it, but I'm not going to make it the only aspect of my character. And to their credit, we stayed above that to a large degree. And it's a trashy show, it was full of sex and booze and drugs and silliness, and we stayed out of the gutter when it came to disability.
Now, when you got that role, did other little people sit there and contact you? Because it is something that it's a milestone. When you think about it, we think about different things, but you're a first. Do you feel like somewhat of a role model? And now because there's social media, it's so much easier to get in touch with you. Did you have people reach out to you, any young people or whatever, just said, hey, this is awesome, or I want to be an actor? Did you feel you inspired anybody?
Well, I hope so. And I hope that, some of my other work did. The community is really good, the little people community. Like when we would do Dollhouse in Chicago or in Washington, D.C., people would come out, or New York, and come out to see it and really support it. And certainly Chelsea was such a huge exposure. But again, I think everyone was so nervous about it being, this is Chelsea Handler, and this is, are you just going to be another Chewie? And so there was definitely a bit of a trepidation about that. And I think that just people get so nervous around little people in comedy if you're a little person, because you just assume it's going to turn out bad for the little person. And so I don't know that, I think there's a sigh of relief almost maybe when it's funny, in a community like this, sometimes you'd almost rather have no exposure than the exposure that possibly could turn out negative. And while I am resolute in thinking that this was not negative, there was such a fear about, is this going to be negative? And here's a sitcom, here's a thing of all jokes, and here's Chelsea Handler, this is going to turn out really bad. And it didn't, and it's too bad that the show didn't go beyond one season, because I think that character was ready to really embark on a lot of multi-dimensional storylines that would have been a lot of fun to do.
Well, how does it feel for you? I mean, it must be frustrating. As I said, you get this role. You've been busting your ass. You get this role, and then the show gets canceled. Were you upset, or you just said, "Hey, man, that's part of the biz"?
Well, I certainly knew it was part of the biz, and I knew that the show wasn't. It didn't come as a surprise. I knew that the show wasn't quite resonating, and it had some issues. But it was interesting because a lot of the cast, I was one of the older people in the cast, even though I played the same age, or close to the same age, and they all work all the time, and to them, they were just saying, "Oh, well, this is my third series that's been canceled. I'll get the next one. Hopefully, will be better." And I was sitting there going, "Wow, these chances don't come along very often. This kind of stinks." And I just hope this happens for me again at some point. And I mean, I haven't been on a regular on a series per se, but I've still worked and I'm still plugging along, and it's not for it's one of those things that it doesn't necessarily translate into suddenly everybody's going to be auditioning you for every role out there, whether they're Little Person or not. People still get in their heads, well, if I have a role for a Little Person, I'm calling Mark. Especially if Peter Dinklage isn't available, and I'm calling Mark. And while that's great, it'd be nice to be able to go out for the third computer guy in the lab at CSI, or
right.
the waiter at the restaurants that the Big Bang Theory goes to. Those kind of parts that it's crazy, because in real life there's little people filling those positions all over the place. The doctors and the lawyers and the waiters and the CPAs and all that. But on television you just don't see that.
So now after that show, you said you ended up in Criminal Minds. Was it good for you to go back to a drama, even though you did comedy?
It was. I mean, I love doing comedy. I find it such a challenge, and I love dissecting why something's funny and what cadence works and all those little nuances that make something funny or not funny. And drama just feels like a nice reprieve from that, where you don't have to be so technical. Comedy is so, people forget how technical comedy is, and drama feels in a way much looser to me. And so it was a nice departure to go and do drama. One fortunate thing about my career is, even though I'm typecast by my size, the diversity of roles I've gotten have been so vast. And I don't play the lawyer in every episode of every TV show. I get to do so many different things, and that's been a real benefit of being so different.
Now, Mad Dogs, as I said, and it's great because your role is the cat. And if people watch the show, if you have Amazon Prime, because when they say the cat, you know exactly. As I said, that opening it's just a creepy ass scene. I mean, when you watch it, it's like it makes you want to watch that show so much more. How did that role come up? And did you know of Sean Ryan's work in The Shield? And did you know you were auditioning for? And did you know it would be a good size role?
Well, I don't know if I didn't pay attention or what, but I didn't realize that Sean Ryan was a part of Mad Dogs at the time. What I knew was that it was going to be an Amazon pilot, and this was in the fledgling. I mean, Amazon's still fledgling a little bit, but they're obviously doing quite well. But they had the Alphas, the John Goodman show on, and that was one of the few bright spots for them. Transparent hadn't even hit yet necessarily, or maybe it was just coming out. So I went in to read for Chris Cole and Charles McDougall, who was the director, and Chris was the creator of the British series, what this was based off of. And the role just seemed so interesting to me, and I think I had only gotten, they didn't give you the whole script, they just gave me my character. I knew the premise, but I just felt like this is one of these parts that has so much potential to be different and interesting, and it's not a gag. Even though it's shocking and it's bizarre and it's definitely fun to have him be a little person, it's not a total gag. The guy's very serious and he's very good at what he does, which is basically a hitman. And so I just indulged in it. And it takes place in Belize, and the character was supposed to have a Belizean accent, Creole accent, which I had no idea what that was. So diving into that was a real. It just made sense to me right off the bat, that part. And I really had a great time at the audition, and I really I felt good walking out of there again. And sure enough, I got it. And then when we got down to Puerto Rico, where we shot it, it's one of these all-night shoots, and it seems so surreal because the scene is so surreal that where I enter, it felt like doing this like late-night bizarro cabaret theater almost, because you're at 4 o'clock in the morning in this mansion in Puerto Rico on the beach wearing a cat mask and doing horrible things. It just seems so bizarre. And that's pretty much what comes across on the screen.
Well, it's the thing about it is when I watched it, that role didn't have to be played by a little person. I don't think that made it more impactful. I think some of the fight scenes made it different, but I think that was a role where I think they could have gone either way in the casting.
I think so too, and I thank you for saying that. And I think that there's so many roles like that you don't need a little person, but once you put me in it, it becomes that much more interesting. It doesn't mean that the show has to be, or my character has to be about my size, but just the mere fact that I'm in it suddenly gives it a different perspective. And this show is certainly the case. When it doesn't matter if the guy's 6 feet tall or 4 feet tall, if he has a gun in your face, it's scary. And you react differently than if he doesn't have a gun. The defining thing is the gun, not the size of the guy. And my character never, at least for most of it, never ends up allowing anybody to get the best of him, because he's smart enough to know that he's 4 feet tall, and then he's going to make decisions based on that won't allow somebody to overpower him. So I think you don't have to, as a writer, you don't have to be writing monologues about what it's like to be a little person. You just have a little person in the role, and it becomes interesting. And
just that cat mask. That's what just makes... it sounds such a small detail, but that just changed. Like, if you had just walked in, you would have been just a hitman. But something about that damn cat mask just freaks you the F out, man. Because it's just, you watch it, you're going, okay, I'm creeped out. And it's not because of the size. It's because, as you said, there's a guy with a cat mask holding a really nice gun.
And for the pilot, when we shot that scene that you're talking about, it was, it's a pilot, so we're short on time, and they hadn't had a costume fitting. That mask did not fit my head at all. About 3/4 of that scene, I can't see anything, because it's turned to the side or pushed down on my face or pushed up, and I'm just looking at the front of the mask. And so I'm walking around, completely can't see anything. It seemed so ludicrous and so non-scary doing it. I'm really happy that it comes off effectively afterwards.
Now, how fun was it doing the big fight scene with those guys? Because it seems it's like you're kicking their asses and they're getting you and they're roughing you up. How fun is that? Because I know it's taken as serious, but it also has a little bit of, because that's the thing, Mad Dogs had a little bit of humor in it. That's just some of the things. And the whole cast was great. But how fun is it doing a scene like that, and then when they're grabbing you and throwing you in a well? That just must be, as an actor, it just must be fun.
Well, especially with those 4 guys. We're talking to Ben Chaplin and Michael Imperioli and Romany Malco and Steve Zahn. We just had such a great time hanging out together. They're such cool dudes. And then to be doing this scene that we are just beating the hell out of each other was hilarious. It was great. And the thing is it was that scene that takes 4 minutes. You shoot for 12 hours, and it's 90 degrees, and you're outside. There was no air conditioning in the mansion, and so you're just dying. You just sweat. It felt like you had just played a 12 hours of tackle football after that. I'm like, me versus 200-pound guys. It's insane. But we just had a riot. We were just cracking up the whole time and exhausted, and it's always fun to kind of let loose and just go for it. And that scene was totally one of those scenes. After the technical stuff's worked out, you just kind of let loose and just go for it. And there were a lot of bruises and a lot of pain.
So after that show wraps, now where are we going now? What are you up to? I know, did you have a play or something recently? Or I know I talked to you in the emails. We couldn't lock down a date. Were you performing or?
I was. I went back to theater. I did a festival of science fiction theater, which basically does not exist. It's an art form that, there's science fiction books and comic books and movies and TV shows, but there's not a lot of science fiction theater. And it's a festival that a brilliant actor named David Dean Bottrell kind of grew out of his own mind about 3 years ago. And this is the third year that we've done the festival. And I did it last year and I did it this year. And did this hilarious piece, which is basically a sitcom about the devil. And it crushed, and it was so much fun to do. And it was great to get back to theater and to get back to just straight up comedy. And again, that technical stuff of finding out what's funny. And Jack Kenny adapted a Clive Barker piece, and Jack Kenny's done been in a million writers' rooms and a showrunner for a ton of shows, and just wrote this really, really funny, tight script. So it felt great to get back and do theater again. It was such a satisfying, fun time.
Now, do you have plans to do some more theater now, or is it something that has sparked your interest back there? That you're like, okay, this is what I like.
Well, I do like it, but it's that kind of show is perfect because it satisfies that sort of craving, and I don't need to go. It's funny because I do so much theater, but I do get bored. Once you kind of accomplish it, it's the hard work in theater comes from slogging in there the fourth week of a run and on a Wednesday night and doing the show for a half full audience, and that's where the real challenge of the show is to keep that fresh. So now that this show's done, I sort of had my fill. My cup is full, and I'm happy to take a break from theater, even though I love it so much.
We have a few minutes left. What else is coming up for you?
Well, I'm doing a film in Utah called Ledge Dweller in August, and there's some other things in the works. But you always kind of you kind of let all these irons in the fire. A couple of scripts that are out there being shopped around, and if one of them happens, it'll be another kind of Chelsea, or either Chelsea or Water for Elephants or Mirror Mirror, some kind of big thing that would be a really nice feather in the cap, or they don't happen.
Now, what's your role in Utah in that movie?
I play. It's fun because I play. It's about a woman who has a kind of a midlife crisis, and I end up being her love interest at the end of the film. I'm a doctor, and she kind of suddenly becomes aware that there's other people. She's been chasing around these dirtbag men, and now there's this good guy dressed in a package that isn't typically what you'd think of as a leading man, and yet I'm kind of the romantic lead for her at the end of the film.
That must be.
Yeah, so it's nice. There should be more of those kind of roles out there.
And now, you said the scripts. Did you write them?
Yeah, I wrote one, and another one I want to do is a travel show where me and a buddy who's a comedian, a little person, and we would travel the world. He was in Dollhouse with me, so we've already traveled the world together, but we'd go back and travel the world and kind of figure out, do the whole Anthony Bourdain thing of, checking out the culture, but do it through the eyes of a little person who lives there. So go to Cairo and meet a little person that lives in Egypt and find out what life is like for a little person in that part of the world, and what it's like for the disability community in that part of the world. Because we got it pretty easy here in the United States.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm guessing, because you've traveled, I'm guessing you've seen a lot. I just said, we have, as much as we complain, we have pretty much, everything's pretty easy in the United States. We of course on Facebook and all that stuff, people bitch about this and that, but as I say, you know what, we have it pretty damn good.
And it does take traveling to other places to realize that, yeah, there's plenty of flaws in the United States, and I could go on and on about them, but it takes going away and seeing other places to realize how good it is, and especially somebody with a disability or somebody different. We're pretty fortunate to live in this country where there's, for all of the struggles and closed-mindedness that there is in this country, compared to a lot of other places, it's a world of difference.
Okay. Hey, well, you know what? I want to thank you for coming on, man. This was good. I'm glad we got to do this.
I had a great time, Steve. Thank you. I enjoyed your show.
Now, Twitter and all that, give that stuff.
Yes. Facebook and Twitter, Mark Povinelli, Povinelli, Instagram, all those things. I should be more active on social media, and maybe after your show I will be.
Exactly. Well, people, check him out. Also, check me at Twitter. I'm at Cooper Talk. That's at Cooper Talk. I tweet a lot of funny stuff. I do tweet just for mostly jokes. Facebook, I have a new page, Cooper Talk Radio. You can check that out, or just look me up, Steve Cooper. My website is coopertalk.net. I have 515 episodes up there, which you can also contact me, Cooper, at coopertalk.net. I will get back to you. Tell me what guests you want to hear. I'll try to get them. Instagram, CooperTalk1. I put up some food things. I put up memes about my show. That's more of just a fun site. And if you want to play Words with Friends, I'm Cooper Talk 1. I love playing people. I have like 12 games going on. It makes me sane. And also, I talked about my health problem. Don't forget my other website, stopthesalt.com. It's the low sodium cookbook. Low sodium cookbook for one. It's $9.95. You can get it at Amazon or Barnes & Noble, or go to my site and get it from me, and I make more money, and I will sign it, and I'll mail it to you. So that's about it. So follow Mark. Check out his work. Go to IMDb. Follow him. And as I said, Cooper, at Cooper Talk on Twitter. Remember, I'm Steve Cooper. I'm only as hip as my guests. Don't forget, drink your water, eat your vegetables, take your vitamins, and I'll talk to you guys next week.